Well, the earth continues to spin, the sun rises in the east, and appraisers still get sued. There's a fog creeping through the profession lately, a thick legal miasma that smells suspiciously like liability. Today, we're dragging that fog into the daylight. Our guest, Isaac Peck, recently wrote about a headline grabbing discrimination case that ended favorably for an appraiser. We're going to sift through the wreckage, poke it with a stick, and ask some hard questions like, are we all one angry borrower away from the courtroom? Spoiler alert, yes, stick around.
Solidify is one of the nation's most trusted valuation and title partners. With their proprietary technology and extensive network, Solidify delivers industry-leading quality, transparency, efficiency, and scale to the largest mortgage lenders in the U.S. Their marketplace of independent qualified field professionals makes the homeownership experience extraordinary every time. Visit solidify.com for more information and stay connected with their latest news on LinkedIn. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast with your host, Hal Humphreys.
Welcome back, everyone, to today's Appraisal Buzzcast. We have a hot button topic today. Let me bring back in Hal, and we're going to get started talking about it. Hey, Hal, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jim. How are you today?
I'm very excited. We have back to join us Isaac Peck, and he's somebody who's in the middle of conversation about liability and legal protection for appraisers. He recently wrote a great article on Working RE, and he's here to talk about it. Hey, Isaac.
Hey, Jim. Hey, Hal. Great to see you guys.
So good to see you, Isaac. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you on the show again. For those who might not know you, give us a quick intro to your background and your work with OREP.
Yeah, so my name is Isaac Peck. I'm the publisher of Working RE magazine, and then also the president of OREP Insurance. And we help a lot of appraisers with their E&O insurance every year. One of the largest providers of a appraiser E&O, and then the many appraisers are familiar with Working RE. We publish the most widely read print magazine for appraisers nationwide.
Awesome. So I think a lot of people already know who you are. Thank you anyway for the introduction. I think it's good for the folks that have not met you to kind of find out who you are and what you're about. Let's talk about this article you just published. Case dismissed. Ohio appraiser wins discrimination lawsuit. What was this case about, and why did it get so much attention?
Yeah, so this is kind of, we've had a half dozen or more lawsuits against appraisers alleging appraisal discrimination. And so this is the first instance that we've seen where a judge has ruled in the appraiser's favor, basically throwing out the accusation of discrimination and absolving the appraiser of liability and the against that allegation that they were biased or discriminatory in their appraisal. And so, while this is not kind of a higher appeals court or, some higher court, right? It doesn't set some kind of national precedent. It's still, I think, a really important victory for appraisers in the sense that, we have a case on record now where an appraiser has been vindicated.
I love it. The judge's ruling was pretty clear and the case was dismissed, but you made the point that this is still a wake-up call for appraisers. Why do you say that?
Well, I think there's a couple interesting things going on with the case in the sense that, first of all, it was backed by a fair housing nonprofit. And that's one of the things that we've seen in some of the other cases. There's several cases here in California, and that as well as the ongoing, very publicized case of Shane Lanham in Maryland, where nonprofits are kind of taking up the mantle and backing these lawsuits against appraisers. And so there's been a lot of discussion about what's going to happen next in terms of, the new politics in the White House, right? And that's likely going to change how HUD is approaching the HUD complaints alleging appraisal bias and discrimination. And so there's been talk about kind of increased financing for nonprofits from the private sector. And perhaps if the federal government and HUD is not going to be pursuing these allegations of discrimination, there's a possibility that nonprofits are going to finance more of these lawsuits against appraisers, right? That the for lack of a better explanation, the left is going to seek to make right in the court system as opposed to filing complaints with HUD or seeking solutions from the federal government, given who's in the White House.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You've talked about kind of a changing legal environment. From your perspective, and it's a unique perspective, you deal with these things all the time, insurance wise. What are the biggest liability concerns appraisers should be aware of right now?
I mean, I think that paying real close attention to the new UAD that's coming out this fall, that has the potential to change some of the liability exposures and liability considerations that appraisers are facing. And I also think it's worth mentioning that, the bias and discrimination issue is not kind of disappeared, right? That we're still seeing active litigation against appraisers, that we still have cases ongoing, and while we expect, from a federal regulatory standpoint, um, some of that to get more efficient and appraisers to be kind of the less of the scapegoat on a federal regulatory perspective, we still think that there's a significant exposure in terms of accusations of bias and discrimination being leveled against appraisers. Um, and I would say that the borrowers continue to be kind of a strong source of claims against appraisers, right? And we call these kind of home inspection related claims often, but it could extend to not measuring the property properly. And so, in that sense, having a strong disclaimer verbiage in your appraisals, especially if you're a residential appraiser, is really important.
Yeah, I think it is. It feels like over the past 3, 4 years, there has been an uptick in lawsuits. I don't think this is something new. Are we just paying closer attention to these things now, or is there actually an uptick? That's the first question. And then what's different about these kinds of claims you're seeing today?
Well, I'd say there's definitely been an uptick in, say, board complaints that have been filed against appraisers. Um, and that, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have come out and said that they're filing 1,000 complaints each, which is a very material or high number. And I'd say that we're probably seeing a small uptick in buyback related demands or litigation in terms of mortgage lenders and other investors bringing claims against appraisers because the Fannie Mae forced them to buy back a loan. That type of litigation is becoming a little bit more popular.
So, with that in mind, how would you suggest that appraisers protect themselves in today's climate, not just with insurance, but with documentation, language, or even how they communicate with their clients?
Well, I think the work file becomes really, really important, right? The being able to explain and articulate why you made the adjustments that you did, why you selected the comps that you did, and having all of that readily organized and accessible and defensible is really important. Even before a loan gets bought back, oftentimes your lender client might include you in those conversations when Fannie Mae is squawking about your bad appraisal.
And this, let's be super clear about this. It has always been the best advice to have a robust work file, have support for your adjustments, those kind of things. Um, it's just right now for our appraisers listening, um, maybe spend a little bit of extra time thinking about having a robust work file and justifying your adjustments and having support for those things so that if somebody makes a claim against you, you've got support for it. Isaac, any advice you'd give to appraisers who are feeling overwhelmed by these legal risks? And, I've been in this business for quite some time. I remember when USPAP first came out, there were several people teaching classes that were just like putting the fear of, the wrath of some unholy demon in you that you're gonna go to jail, you're gonna be arrested. There's still a fear among us appraisers that we're gonna get in trouble for something. What's the best way to stay proactive instead of reactive?
I mean, I'd say good education, right? But taking a lot of the classes that you guys are doing over at Appraiser learning, constantly trying to improve and build your knowledge base as an appraiser is a really good way to stay on top of what's happening, and keep, building your skill set. I think that, the as a profession. And, even as it relates to buybacks or board complaints from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, right? The that's happening less and less on cookie cutter property appraisals, and it's more likely to happen on more custom, um, more nuanced appraisal assignments. And I think that that's where the profession is headed in any case, right? That appraisers are going to be more in demand on the more custom, more nuanced, complex work. And that means that, appraisers may need to really work on developing their expertise in those particular areas, right? And if you're going to do new types of assignments, ask for help, make sure you know what you're doing. And really try to wrap your head around the nuanced, complex assignments, if you're going to be doing that kind of work.
At the end of the day, meet the competency rule.
I would agree completely.
Let's do this. I want to hear a brief message from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
ACI introduces ACI Sky Workbench, a cutting-edge cloud-based platform designed to streamline URAR appraisal report generation like never before. With seamless workflow integration, automated data management, and built-in compliance, Workbench empowers appraisers to work smarter, faster, and with greater accuracy. Visit aciweb.com for more info.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. I've got Isaac Peck on the line with me today. Isaac is a good friend. He provides E&O insurance for real estate appraisers, among other industries, but he's a fine human being and he provides a good service. So, Isaac, thank you for being here with us today to talk about some of these liability issues that we appraisers face. I want to warn you, Isaac. Jim Morrison tries to come at me every episode with an anonymous appraiser question to trip me up and point out to the world how much I don't know. I happened to get a peek at the anonymous appraiser question this week, and I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole. Jim, what is our anonymous appraiser question this week?
Hey, Hal. Yeah, so you're going to be pretty much off the hook for this one. We get these comments in, and sometimes we don't have an expert to answer them right away. So this one is a little bit older. It's been about 2 months, so I hope the person is still listening. Reach out to us at comments@appraisalbuzz.com if you do have a question for one of our experts. But this one says, "Hi, everyone. Can you advise me on what your E&O insurance amounts are for including a single claim in total? I'm finding mine are too low to match me with a lender. As a certified residential appraiser, what is common?" And I feel like Isaac is the perfect guest to be able to talk about this.
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Jim. I'd say the most common kind of requirement or insurance limits that are going to meet the vast majority of your lender requirements is going to be $1 million per claim and $1 million aggregate. And I'd say about 95% of appraisers are carrying that limit. There are lower limits available, right? You can get $300,000 per claim or $500,000 per claim. But generally, to get the $1 million of coverage, it's only going to cost you, 50 or $70 more per year. So it makes a lot of sense just to spend a little bit of extra money and get the $1 million limit. And plus, that's what the majority of lenders and, insurance requirements now is $1 million per claim.
Well, there it is. It's a question that I am incapable of answering, but Isaac has answered it very well. My thought on insurance is always as much as you can afford. But look, you got to be reasonable about it. You got to think about, operating costs, operating expenses, those kind of things. But do make sure you have the coverage to take care of you if something happens. Anything else we need to cover here, Jim?
No, thank you so much for joining us, Isaac. We'll put the link to your article in the comments in the description, and so everyone can join it and read it.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on the show.
Isaac, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to join us. If you have not had a chance to check it out, Isaac's article, Case Dismissed, is a must read if you haven't seen it yet. Check it out at Working RE. Stay informed, stay protected. For Jim Morrison and Isaac Peck, I'm Hal Humphreys. We'll see you next week on the Appraisal Buzzcast.